right, we are back for the 5th episode of the Under the Number podcast. Today, we're joined by Brady White, former 4-star quarterback, Southern California, high school All-American, ended up at Arizona State, transferred, ended up at Memphis, where he literally threw for over 10,000 yards. Following that, had a stint in the USFL, and after doing a bit of coaching back at Memphis, is now among the absolute newest coaches at Arizona State on the Arizona State football staff. So, Brady, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we're going to work backwards here for sure. But I think just since it's kind of breaking news, only last week you decided or announced anyway that you were going back into coaching at Arizona State. What drove that decision and how did that go down?
Yeah, well, I knew I was going to be coaching. I obviously played in the USFL for 2 years and was fortunate to have the opportunity back at Memphis to coach the last 2 seasons. And so there was a little bit of overlap with those things, but, Coach Silverfield and I have a really, really strong relationship, and he was kind enough to let me do my thing, so to speak. But I still was able to get that, because I knew coaching was kind of the next step for me whenever my playing days were over. And he had opportunities that came open and had thought of me, and, I took advantage of those. So it was just kind of the perfect storm to get the ball rolling with that, while also, writing that final chapter of my playing career. And after this season, I knew, moving forward full time, I was going to be a coach. And so we finished up our year, and then you get to go home for, a brief stint, and the dominoes fall pretty quickly, as anyone that follows college football knows, not only with players but coaches. And I was just back home and enjoying some time with family and friends, and got a call from Coach Dillingham about an opportunity here, and was super excited about it. And then ended up talking with him and Coach Arroyo, our offensive coordinator, and shortly after that was given the job, and was super excited and made all the plans to make the move and get out here as quick as I could. That's
awesome. So that's clearly your most recent and kind of breaking news in your personal life, but I kind of want to start backing way up to, I trained with Steve Clarkson in middle school and high school. Brady trained with Steve Clarkson in middle school and high school. When was it in your youth or high school football career where you decided to get very serious and knew that this was going to be your passion and, define the next many years of your life?
I think I always knew that, that was always my dream and my goal. Even as a kid, I think, you got those school projects as like kindergartners and first graders of what do you want to be when you grow up? And, I wrote, play in the NFL and be an NFL quarterback. And football was always just my biggest love when it came to sports. And I was always very serious about it. And I think, I'm trying to think what age, but I worked with our local, quarterbacks coach, so to speak. He was a high school coach and had trained, his name's Dean Harrington. I'm sure, plenty of people know that name. He coached a lot of really good quarterbacks, like Matt Moore, Kyle Buller, those types of guys that came from Hart High School where I played. And so he was the guy in our area that, had the camps, and, you'd go work with privately a little bit. But it was mainly the every weekend type of camp thing. It wasn't necessarily the specialized training one-on-one all the time. But I really knew probably as I was, upper elementary school heading into junior high that, I want this to be, like my life. Like I want to get really, really down, down to the nitty gritty and like get super serious on just pursuing this as a career. Even though it's always been my dream, I knew it was very attainable kind of around that time. So that's when, I started working with Steve and, obviously met, guys like yourself through that process. But I think I got started heading into junior high. So around that 6th, 7th grade, I think it was maybe the, bridging. So you could say 7th grade to be safe.
Yeah. And getting to work with Steve Clarkson, he's objectively among the best quarterback coaches in the country. He's built a brand. He was someone that people would fly across the country to go to his workouts, to attend one of his camps, like regularly. So being a Southern California quarterback on the come up, it was definitely a good place to be for access to that type of thing. There were
No
guys. Look, I just remember some of those sessions on Sundays at Cathedral High School or some of his bigger camps in San Diego. There were just incredible players everywhere you looked. What was it about working with those guys week in and week out that kind of pushed you or elevated you?
Yeah, I just think you're, like you said, you're surrounded by a bunch of studs at all levels too. That's the cool thing. And you're not always working with the older guys, but like you said, like whether you're showing up to get ready for your whatever hour-long session or your one-on-one, or you're just showing up for the group, you are seeing Matt Barkley, ripping it with Steve out there.
Yep.
And you're seeing these guys that, have gone on to be, elite college football quarterbacks, and then, plenty of them playing in the NFL. So I think you're just surrounded by a ton of really, really good talents, really good people too, including Steve and all of his staff. Those are guys that I still talk to this day. And
Tim Cobb, shout out to Tim
Oh yeah,
Cobb.
yeah. Coach Cobb was, is who I basically started out with. Obviously I joined, I was working with Steve, but he had me working with Cobb from the jump. So Cobb can technically claim having the hands first on me. But yeah, so it's just, you're just surrounded by people that are going to make you better, just because, it's the saying of, you're kind of the sum of the group that you surround yourself with. And, you are who, you surround yourself with, like with friends and things of that nature. I think as an athlete, that holds very true as well. If you're just competing and working with a bunch of slaps, like you're not pushing yourself.
Right.
There's no one that's there to kind of show you a thing or two to kind of get 1% better, to move the needle on your game, improving. And I'm not saying that you can't, like, there's going to be people that aren't as good or need to develop, but if you're intentionally around people that just aren't pushing you, I don't think that helps you. And I think with Steve and his coaches, like, they gave you that environment of, there's just guys all over the place and older guys to learn from that can share wisdom and that you can watch, do drills or show you certain things. And also people your age that are just, thought of highly and really talented, or just do little things there that, you may not be as strong in. And you can take little bits and pieces. And you also have to, make sure that you stay in your own lane and you are mastering your own craft and being the player that you are, because, not everyone's genetically made to do certain things or have the capability to do what everyone else can do. So it made it really fun. They did a really great job at keeping it competitive and very, focused and serious, but also, like friend or foe with Coach Cobb and, certain drills that Steve creates that make it really enjoyable. And those camps were always a blast. So that's definitely, a super cool, years of memories that, you and I have kind of shared those experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of amazing when you look back. I was just looking at an old photo the other day. At the big camps and the retreats, it was even more so this way. But on a standard Sunday at Cathedral, I mean, there were guys like you, Wilton Spate, Tate Martell, Travis Waller, formerly. David Sills. I mean, hilarious now looking back. The guy who was just like an entertaining but really good little mini guy who would go up as like a 9-year-old and would make sure that he was at every workout was Miller Moss, who's now the starter for USC.
No doubt.
I mean, I remember him as like an elementary school little guy. It's kind of amazing.
He had the long curly hair with the gold cleats, and everyone loved Miller Time, and he always had a little edge to him.
Miller Time, he had swag as like a 9-year-old. You gotta hand it to him. Maybe we should have seen it coming.
Yeah, no, but it's, again, that just kind of speaks to, the point you're making is just, there's young kids, like even like guys like yourself who were, years younger than me that I'm seeing consistently out there who end up, developing into whatever they become. And it's cool to reconnect with them or to be watching them and be like, holy crap, like this kid is up for a Heisman or he's like starting in the NFL or whatnot. And I'm like, I remember when he was in diapers just running around the fields.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I just want to hear a little bit and kind of let people in on your, you mentioned you decided you were going to commit and this was going to be, you're going to go all in on your development as a player, as a quarterback. So part of that is working privately with someone like Steve Clarkson and going to those Sunday sessions every week. And another part is that you basically, if you really are going to commit, you can't just not work on your football for an off season if you're really trying to get serious. And particularly in Southern California with things like the 7-on-7 circuit, there are these clubs that you can play with if you get basically selected. You played for B2G, which was a very well-known one and honestly formidable team to see at a 7-on-7 tournament because there were just studs everywhere.
But yeah, I mean, I would argue we were the best at the time.
Probably the best 7-on-7 team in the country. And like I remember we played you guys in one game at Cathedral and we scored on the first drive and the team was literally going nuts. My own teammates.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like, we're going to talk about the time that we scored on B2G on the first drive of the game. But anyway, talk a little bit about that. Talk about the circuit and some of the guys on both sides of the ball who you got to know through that.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, names are endless, so that's going to be tough. But, like, yeah, it is. It's kind of you have to, find your own balance when it comes to multiple sports and just selecting what you want to do in an off season or how you want to attack a full year, so to speak. But you're a kid. And so like for me, it'll be funny, now that I'm a coach, seeing how I kind of view things of that nature as we get going here in recruiting, for myself. But, everyone tells you like, oh, you need to do this and that, or you can't do this or that. I think, you got to do what feels good for you. There's tons of benefits to playing multiple sports. It also, I think it helps kids not get burnt out as long as they're, as long as you're in, like, for me, like, for example, football, like I was always in football for the right reasons and had the right mindset about it. So I don't mind doing it 24/7, 365, but there are people who, can't handle that, or maybe are getting pushed from outside sources, whether it's family or, coach or a guardian or something. And so sometimes playing multiple sports gives you like that mandatory time of like, oh, now you got to go play basketball or baseball or do whatever you want. On the flip side of the coin, like sometimes that could be a detriment to you developing, or you're missing out, like you said, on 7-on-7 or important camps that maybe get you a lot of exposure. There's no right or wrong answer. It's life, man. Like everyone's going to kind of run their own course and go on their own journey. For me, I loved basketball and played it basically, I think, through my sophomore year of high school, and then ended up stopping. But I absolutely loved it, and I thought it was a benefit for me. I still was, fortunate enough to, you communicate with coaches and let people know, like, hey, I'm not going to be there for this tournament, or I'm not going to be able to get to practice this day for X, Y, and Z, whether it's for basketball or football. Towards the end of a football season when you're getting like winter workouts, you're like, nope, I'm transitioning to basketball. Or as basketball tends to bleed into those camps and 7-on-7s, you're like, all right, dude, I'm not going to this basketball tournament. Or I'm not going to be at basketball. Like I've got this stuff. And so I've had, I've been blessed to have had really good people around me that have always been flexible, understanding of, what I'm doing. And so I never ran into that issue. The decision for me to like put the basketball down and strictly focus on football, kind of when I was in high school, was really mainly because I wanted to spend a full off season, like actually working out, like getting bigger and stronger, having that time to focus on that, as well as, practicing football and doing quarterback related things. But I wasn't like grinding away. It was really mainly for that off the field type of work, because I was a little like we all are. We're built a little more slender when we're younger, and I'm not gifted in the gene pool in terms of being 6'5" and holding 240 like a Greek god. So that was one of my knocks coming out, where I really needed to focus on just adding some weight, and that was the main reason why I kind of made the transition. And two, just because I think it was after my first varsity, year starting, and you're halfway through high school now. Like, I'm not playing basketball after this. Like,
yeah,
I'm gonna be playing college football. So let's do everything I could possibly do to set myself up for the next phase.
Right. Talk a little bit about it's always funny looking back on that weight gain and trying to pack on some pounds of obviously muscle, but it's hilarious in high school. I mean, I remember literally being like, I think I need to eat I'm going to try to eat about 6,000 calories a day.
I don't know I never had a calorie count. It was like, for me, that was basically eat as much as you can. I mean, it was like the triple decker, like PB&Js at night with a protein shake every night. And, just, mom's either packing you a thicker lunch, or you need to make sure like you have snacks throughout the day. I mean, as a kid, it's ridiculously hard, especially like when you're that young. No, I was able, when I stopped playing basketball and actually like hit the weight room a little bit, going into like sophomore to junior year, I gained some good weight and was, like noticeably like 10, 15 pounds heavier than kind of what I had started the football season at.
Yeah.
And, like my basketball coaches kind of seeing me around campus were like, oh, dude, you're like, I could see it coming on a little bit. I'm like, yeah, so I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But it was funny. Like once I got to college, I was able to put on weight like quickly. Like
really,
they got 20 pounds on me in like 2 months.
Really? So how much did you weigh when you finished high school, and what did you peak in college?
So I went into my junior year, probably the heaviest that I'd been in high school. That was after a full off season of like grinding in the weight room. And I got up to like 185, 180. I was like 183 to 185. But as you get to the football season, like you're obviously not shoving your face. You're starting to dial back, and you're still working out, but you're also not trying to like get swole and do all these, where you're sore. So
not lifting 2 hours a day during the season.
No, and it's just not as intense, so to speak. You're still working out, staying strong. But so I think I went into the junior year the heaviest I ever was, which was like that 183 mark. And, always when I got to season, I would drop a little bit. You drop to about 180. And then I kind of always stayed right around there. Like even going from junior to senior year and starting out the senior year, I just always was right around the 180 mark. So I just couldn't push it. Like if I ever did, it was up to like that 183. And so I left high school at 180, walked into Arizona State at 180 pounds. And then within 2 months of being there, I was up to 200.
Wow. How did they do that?
One, obviously, like you're on like the, weight gaining type of program. So like you're just mandatory protein shakes that are ginormous after a workout. And, but two, I think like the combination of, even though you might like, I could have worked out even more in high school. It wasn't like I was like super like detailed, and like some of these high school programs have great lifting programs, and we didn't but it was just on my own. So the regimented, just, constantly working out, also the intensity of those workouts, like they only have you for a set amount of time. So you're like, not in and out, but me and you are lifting. Okay. You do your set of squats. Now I'm under the bar. When I'm done, we're loading up your weight. You're going again. And so you knock out workouts, full ass workouts that are pretty intense and taxing, within an hour and a half at longest.
Yeah.
So just doing that kind of the everyday life of a Division I athlete that all these high school kids don't know of until they're there.
Right.
And so that combined with, they're feeding you plenty, and the shakes, and just that's your everyday life, that got me up to 200 pretty quickly.
So let's talk a little bit more about the high school recruiting process. You were at Hart High School. You had Trent Irwin, shout out Stanford alum and current Cincinnati Bengal.
Yeah.
Trent, who was just such an amazing high school, college, and pro receiver, but as a high schooler, it was just a joke how good this guy was. And you guys threw for a million yards. But so number one, talk a little bit about actually playing at Hart and having a receiver like that.
Yeah, well, Trent, me and Trent got connected, at that off season of transitioning from 6th grade to 7th grade. Mm-hmm. He ended up finding myself and our Pop Warner team and ended up joining us. So we, built a really strong relationship and connection both on and off the field that has obviously lasted, to this day. So that's my guy. I love him. He was in my wedding, all that, the whole 9 yards. But playing at Hart was super fun, man. I mean, obviously we had a good group of kids that have grown up together and known, just really good relationships. And you meet new people and you kind of add to your friend group. But just a fantastic experience there. I met my wife there. We had awesome coaches. Everyone knows about the legacy and history that Hart holds, and that Coach Mike Harrington and his family, his brothers that they have. And so being able to play for him and play with my boys, and share those experiences, and obviously have success, win a CIF championship and light it up for 3 years was.
Who did you guys beat in CIF?
Valencia, crosstown rival.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. We blew a 27-0 lead earlier that year for the league championship, and ended up running back into them at CIF and beat them on their home turf for the ring. So
wow,
it was it was nice.
That's awesome. Another thing that I think is very interesting about the era when you were in high school and I was in high school is I think that through all of your success at Hart and throwing for 1,000,000 yards and excelling at these different camps and combines, people obviously started to notice you, started to get offers, which we'll talk about that as well. But I feel like it was a very interesting time because it was kind of like the first wave of recruits who had to deal with social media. Where if you got an offer, you could use it to your advantage. You tweet it out, other coaches see it. There's a lot of copycat activity among those coaches. And then on the flip side, as cool as it was, where you've got, companies that people will remember like Under the Radar and the D1 Bound College Level Athletes guys and all this kind of little emerging media around high school recruits who are 14, 15, 16, maybe 17 years old. Definitely added, I think, to the spotlight, not to mention doing things like the Elite 11. But I just like to hear your thoughts on that because it is kind of amazing how much of a spotlight and pedestal all of a sudden there was with everything being online and filmed and tweeted.
Yeah, I think I was in like the prime of that stuff. Obviously it's ridiculous nowadays. And so like people could argue this is the prime just because now there's like money involved.
Right.
But in terms of like the actual experience and like value that stuff held, and you're talking about 7-on-7, like 7-on-7 is a joke now. It's like, it's not even, no one tracks it. Like, universities still hold those tournaments, and it's a good way to go, watch kids. And it's not illegitimate. It's not a waste of time, but it ain't like what it was, where like those 7-on-7 tournaments, whether it was with your club or your high school, like actually were like potential, coaches are there, like, and you're going to get offered right after, or, it carries more juice to have won that tournament and be named the MVP or whatever.
Right.
So I feel like I was kind of right in that sweet spot of, like you said, just there's media outlets and like specific groups that are coming out, like highlighting all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, utilizing social media to, I don't know if it's to brand, it's not necessarily brand yourself, but to just put out there what's going on, kind of with your recruitment or just, with your career and how things are going. And so it was a lot of fun. It was super fun just because, like you said, like kind of snowballs. So like once one offer hits, now here they start coming, and then levels of, schools like, all right, now an SEC or a Power 5 or Pac-12. And then it's like, okay, here come 2-3 more. So it's interesting. It was super cool to like have experienced all that, at a high level, and to have competed in those like legit elite competitions, 7-on-7 tournaments, travel around the country, do all that. Very fortunate to have, been a very big part of that and been with some really, really good people.
Another thing that I feel like you participated in during kind of a golden era was the Elite 11. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what is the dynamic like when they obviously they're trying to put a group of, alpha personalities, the big men on campus, put them all in one place, make them compete, make them spend all this time together and film it and put it on ESPN when you're only 16 or maybe 17 years old. What was that like? Talk a little bit about it. Who was the group? Like, let's hear it.
It was super sick, man. It was a great experience, and I'm glad that I was the last year of the actual Elite 11 competition in Oregon, where you might not get in the 11, because after my year they went to the whole semifinals in Redondo, and then they just took the actual finalists to Oregon. So there was I don't know if it's if they were always trending that way, or if like just, people didn't like the whole cut type of, you didn't make the cut, or like, you've got your, like you said, you're on TV and you're telling, 15, 16-year-old kids, like, you're not a part of the 11 type of stuff. But
for people who don't know, just before you even get into it, for people who don't know, break down exactly how it used to work with, you get your invitation after,
yeah,
competing at a regional and all that.
So you basically, obviously everyone knows about Elite 11 camps, and so they have tons of them throughout the country, different checkpoints in different states, and those are regional camps where you can go and compete. There's one out in California, and that might have been an invite one because we had a huge group of like stars with Josh Rosen, Blake Barnett, Sam Darnold, myself, Drew Lock, like all these dudes that, kind of came in for that one, and just also how much talent was in the California, the state of California. So you have regional camps where you can get invited throughout the year. If you get an invite to the Elite 11, that's the whole, go to Oregon experience. You're on Nike campus. You always, as the quarterbacks, you always got there earlier than the rest of the athletes because you had, that military workout day that was always thrown in there, and you've got the quarterback drills and learning the playbook and all these different challenges and tests that they do to push you and to test you and start ranking you in the 11. And every day, you see your name and stuff. And then I think that's 2 days. And then the third day, boom, that's when all the athletes get out there and you start, you're on a team. And you've got, your first day of 7-on-7 after, you do all your typical Nike camp drills of one-on-ones and testing for those guys. And then the last day is that final 7-on-7 day where, it's, I think, double elimination. I don't know if they do now, but at least for us, it was double elimination. And, you're just trying to outlast and win the championship. So it's, it was fun. It was super fun. It was a cool experience. I remember I got my ticket up in the Bay Area. I didn't even feel like I had performed that great on that day. I still was in the top of that group, but like I remember I had absolutely torn it up in the LA one. Like they didn't give me a ticket. I think they gave it to Blake Barnett.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, in my opinion, because I'm sure there's people out there who think I suck ass, but in my opinion, and then multiple people like who came up to me right after, whether it was like reporters or just people that were in attendance, they were like, you were head and shoulders like the best one out there today. So like just keep working, like your ticket will come.
Yeah.
Like it was one of my best camps in my high school career. That and a couple of college camps. I vividly remember it. And I think after that, and just the season that I'd put together my junior year, like they knew like, okay, this guy's got to get one. And I don't know if it was premeditated or not, but I remember I had a solid day up in the Bay Area, got invited, and then had a really good experience up in Oregon, and I think ended up finishing like 5th. But I went into the last day at number 2, and we didn't last long enough in 7-on-7 to be able to kind of compete your way into, maybe winning it. So
talk a little bit about some of the other guys who were in that group and just what the interpersonal dynamics are in a setting like that.
I had a great relationship with all these dudes. Now, some of them I didn't, either I didn't talk to them or, we just didn't have that much of a relationship. But gosh, my year was, it was Blake Barnett, Josh Rosen, Drew Lock, Jarrett Stidham, Kyler Murray, DeAndre Johnson, DeAndre Francois, Sam Darnold, myself, Ricky Town, Alex Malzone, Ben Hicks, Ryan Brand was another name. He went to, I think he was like committed to Air Force. He was kind of like the underdog.
Brian Lewerke.
Yeah, Brian.
Travis Waller.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Brandon Wimbush.
There you go. There's another. God, and me and Brandon Brandon, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. We have a great relationship.
Drew Lock, Sharon Jones.
Oh, Sharon Jones.
Ross
yeah,
Bowers.
he was a Southern Cal. Yep,
Ross.
But yeah, so it was like a really good group. A lot of big names, and big time like school commits, things of that nature. But I remember just day one getting situated, and then you got like the workout that was like forever, like literally I think 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. like with little 15-minute breaks in between at each. And, that's like the prior year, I think they did the full-on Navy SEAL thing. And what I heard not too long ago was like they had, they kind of got slapped on the hand just because it's like, dude, if something happens to one of these kids, like you're in a big time like issue.
Yeah.
So they didn't take it like that far, but we still did we still had team red, white, and blue with, shout out Mike Irwin who kind of ran that for us. Like we're still doing like with the rucksacks, like running through the forest, simulating one of your team members getting shot and you got to carry him the rest of the way and swimming in a lake, like with a raft that you got to like get back to the beach after swimming forever into the lake and back around a buoy and then carry it to the top. Like you're doing a bunch of crap like that it's just, again, like I said, it's just challenging you and test your mental fortitude. And being a smaller kid, that wasn't like a strength of mine. I got after I gave it best. Like I wasn't walking out there like, oh yeah, he's stud. Held my own like in the running, but like when it came to like carrying a bunch of heavy stuff and doing that, like I wasn't winning none of those. But then once like we got to actual like football, that's when I started to climb in the ranking. And when we got to 7-on-7, the first day I lit it up, I was just on fire. And so I went into the last day as number 2, and we ended up losing our 2 games pretty early. It's always typically the guy on the winning team, of the championship. As long as he's not just riding coattails, he's probably going to win the MVP, and that was Blake.
You've kept decent relationships with some of those guys?
Yeah, so I've been extremely close with a lot of those guys. It's still, you still talk to them today, and you rub shoulders with them, and like, when you're passing, like I saw Blake 2 years ago at the coaching convention because he's working with some company and was out there, and Brandon's now running his own mogul. I don't know if they're a agency but he's running that company.
Business. Yeah, I just saw.
There you go.
They're venture backed by a firm here in Dallas. I literally was talking about.
There you go.
Yeah.
So he's doing that, and there's a family friend of ours that works with him. So I see pictures. I'm like, oh, what a small world. And then you've got guys like Jarrett and Drew that I was super close with who are still playing, and I wasn't close with Kyler, but Kyler's doing his thing. So it's just everyone kind of. You go your separate ways. Obviously once you get to college, some guys you run into and play, like Ben Hicks and Ross and stuff, and other guys you don't see for a while unless you're just following them on social. But I would say the large majority of that group I've kept tabs with, followed, and some of them, still have a really strong relationship. And so it's always fun. I was never a part of a group that was like, I was never butting heads with any of these, like you said, like you got a room full of alphas. I never was butting heads with any of these other guys, but there were definitely moments where like I'm sitting back and I'm like, hey, let's see how this pans out. Or I don't know if I would say that you're mic'd up and you're going to be on TV, and kind of more of watching from afar, hearing. And I made sure that I didn't get burnt on any of that stuff.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. It literally is a reality show starring 16 and 17-year-old kids fighting.
It is. And they obviously, it's just like any other show. Like they're going to have, it's not a script because none of it's scripted. Like, but they definitely have an agenda and they have storylines and production that they want to put out. But it's not scripted. It's just, they have the final edit. So they get to take their footage and piece it together however they want. Now, some would argue, some stuff looks fake or phony, but anything with the quarterbacks is pretty genuine, so to speak, and they're not being told or given a criteria of like what to talk about. Like it's pretty raw.
So obviously by the time you were at the Elite 11, I don't know if you were committed, but you had a lot of offers and were well into the recruiting cycle.
So, I was committed.
You're committed. Okay. So talk a little bit about some of the offers that you ended up receiving and kind of what was your decision-making and visits and what was really impacting your choice. Cause it's kind of amazing how big of a life-defining decision it is to be making as a teenager. But that's how it goes.
Yeah, no, I was very fortunate to have the ability to, travel and get to some of these schools on unofficials. I know not everyone has that luxury, so I'm very, fortunate and blessed to, have been able to do that and have parents that are super supportive and want to do everything in their power to, make sure I have those opportunities and gather as much information and go, see the places that, like you said, it could potentially be where you're living for a long time. But I think I had 40 plus by the end of my kind
40
of going
offers.
into my, 40 plus offers. I think it was around 45. And then there were plenty of schools, like a couple SEC, some, like Big 10, Big 12 that were coming on later that just out of respect, like I was already kind of starting to thin out my schools and narrow it down to where I wanted to go. And so like there were schools that I was like, don't even waste your time with an offer.
Yeah.
Like I'm starting to make a decision here. I appreciate you coming out, or I appreciate you,
Yeah.
wanting me, but you're like basically just too late. Not that anything against them. It was just like I was already so far along in my process. But yeah, so I was, lucky and to have the pick of the litter in terms of where I wanted to go. I think I had probably every Pac-12 school. Maybe outside of, I actually didn't have UCLA, which was hilarious and, kind of gave me a chip on my shoulder because they're in the backyard. And I didn't have USC just because they were in the midst of a coaching change. But it was always a dream of mine to play as a kid, it was the Pac-10.
Yeah, right.
And I'd been to a lot of those schools, and it was a dream of mine to play in the Pac-10, which was now the Pac-12. Now I still gave, like I remember Penn State and I think Tennessee. There might have been one other that were still in like kind of like that top 6, top 5 as I narrowed it down. But once I got to like my top 3 or 4, it was all Pac-12 schools that I was kind of wanted to go to. But for me, when it came to like looking into schools and making a decision, I've got great people around me. I've got awesome parents. I'm grateful for the way they raised me and helping put the head on my shoulders that I got. And I knew that it was a very important decision. I knew it was more than just 4 years of your life, and it's more than just football too. This is that you're picking somewhere you're going to be living. You're picking a school that you're attending. People you're going to be around in terms of coaching staffs and the people throughout the university that are, going to be helping you out. So it was, it was never daunting for me, but I definitely had that perspective from a young age and knew it's more than just, all right, who's the best football team and blah, blah, blah. Because then you also bring it down to the nuts and bolts of like quarterback play and like, all right, what system do they run? Who have they put out? How are they developing their quarterbacks and, what are they going to surround you with? All that type of crap. So it's not crap, it's legitimate, but there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. So I was able to make sure that my mind was right. And it ended up, I always wanted to push myself academically, and people laugh because I ended up picking Arizona State, but like the little hidden gem of Arizona State that was like a big part of what ultimately made me choose them was their honors college, the Barrett Honors College that they have. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
I know that Arizona State is consistently voted the most innovative university in America.
Yeah, it's number one in innovation, which they publicize a ton. And they actually have really good programs with like their journalism program is top tier. I think they've got a pretty, like the WP Carey School of Business is pretty legit. They've got a really good sports law and business program for the graduate level. So there's plenty of things that are, top tier, but it's just the stigma that ASU gets. And it is. I mean, it lives up to that. But
it's interesting to talk about that because number one, you graduated super early, right? And then you got a master's, and you obviously took the academic route very seriously. And
and I graduated early from high school. Like I was always going to enroll in the spring. But yeah, no, I took it super seriously. And when I went into my first unofficial, because I took a couple here at ASU. My first one they were kicking ass in football, and I had a great relationship with Coach Norvell and Coach Graham and the rest of that staff. And obviously, like, loved the city of Tempe and Phoenix and just the environment of Arizona. And had no clue about the Barrett thing. And so when I saw the Barrett thing, it like they shot up pretty high on my list. Like, I think I walked out of that visit and told them, like, all right, you guys, like, after today, like, you guys are number one. And this was early, obviously, but everything was encompassing. So obviously, like, Stanford's and Cal's and those schools are very premier programs in all facets. And then you had Oregon's that came in, and, you know, that was extremely enticing. And I had family members that were students at Oregon and student athletes, and they were obviously under Chip Kelly, playing at the highest level, and sweet uniforms, innovation, football wise,
lots of like.
Yeah, so it wasn't. I don't want to say it was difficult, but it was a tough decision, and just requires a lot of thinking and really asking questions. But everything kind of boiled into what went into my decision. But I felt that Arizona State just had the best offer and everything. But they were like back-to-back 10, 11 win seasons in football, like competing for the South, if not the Pac-12 championship. It's Arizona. It's absolutely beautiful. It's, far enough where you're away from home, but you're close enough where, like, if you need anything or if people want to come see you, it's a quick flight or a little bit of a drive. And so it just kind of hit on every angle possible for me. And then also, the key was, I think, my relationships with the staff and Coach Norvell, obviously, who I played for, not only here, but at Memphis. So, and how they recruited me, so that's ultimately what went into me making that decision. And I committed pretty early. I was committed for like 9 months, I want to say. So,
did you take all of your official visits?
No, I took one. No regrets on that, but like, there's another part of me. It just gets funky with coaches. Sometimes, like, it depends on the player, where they don't want guys taking, I was never wired that way. Like, even if I did take all, like, I was going to stay committed to Arizona State. But for that reason, like, for me, I'm like, I don't need, like, I know I'm coming here.
Yeah.
I don't need to stress you guys out. I don't need to go see other places, even though it'd probably be cool.
Yeah.
I had seen plenty on officials, and when I stopped by campuses, after certain camps. So I didn't need all that. I took my ASU official, and that was it.
What was your least favorite element of recruiting? What were some of the weird things you had to deal with that you just wish went that way?
I mean, honestly, the recruiting back then was so much better than it is now, just because it was actually, there just wasn't this hodgepodge bull crap of NIL and the portal. So it was more real.
Right.
But there was still things that were annoying. I think for me, it's like just sometimes, like, the media stuff, it's like seeing that some guys are getting offers and you're not, and you're, like, clearly better, or just that stuff. But that's, like, I don't know if that's the recruiting piece of it, more of like your own ego, and you're just a kid and handling it all, because you don't know what's real or not. Like, a lot of these offers are uncommittable, or they're just, now that I'm on the coaching side, you see the different angles that you take with stuff. But
describe an uncommittable offer to people who don't know.
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward for those of you listening. Like, the scholarship offer, right? So, hey, Brent, like, we'd like to offer you a scholarship to play at Arizona State University. Fantastic. Brent's excited. He celebrates with his family and posted on his social. But, in the near future, down the line, when he's calling to commit to myself or wherever the hell you're trying to commit to, they don't they don't accept it. They just say, hey, like, it's tough. Like, that's part of, it's honestly an unfortunate, sad part of the business, but that's very real. Like, that happens. They don't accept your commitment, or they tell you, like, no, like, spots are full, or, we're not extending that. There's a variety of reasons for why that is that way. If, fortunately, the people that I've been around and the coaches that I've played for and have worked with in my short time in coaching, like, I haven't seen that, whatever offer is extended, it's committable. It's real. But nowadays stuff gets super tricky just because now like the portal and NIL and stuff, and that's hurt high school recruiting. So it's a crazy time now. But for those listening, that's basically what an uncommittable offer means. It's like it's just your commitment's not getting accepted, even though you supposedly had a scholarship offer.
Right. Okay, so this is kind of a two-part question. One, as you're a guy with 45 offers, you're tearing it up in high school, and coaches are fawning over you, and you're getting the media attention. Part one of the question: how did you stay anchored? How did you keep your feet on the ground to not get a big head with that type of thing? And two, when you end up at a school like Arizona State, which, as you detailed, has fantastic academic avenues if you choose to take them, but that is also definitely a campus
that's a good way of wording it.
Endless distractions, like legendary, parties, if that's your cup of tea, but has to be distracting nonetheless. How did you balance it?
Yeah, to answer part one, what grounded me was, first of all, just my faith, and you have to credit my parents to that. Just not that they forced that down my throat, but they raised me the right way. I'm super grateful for my mom and my dad. Especially nowadays when I look back and just like, God, I'm so glad that, I had them to look up to and to lean on. And I'm glad that they raised, me and my siblings the way that they did. I'd like to think that we're decent human beings and contribute positive things to society and have good heads on our shoulders. So a lot of credit goes to them, but really my faith, which, obviously is a personal journey. So I think I came to my parents and wanted to get baptized at a very young age. I remember telling them that myself. And you just like anything else, you continue to grow and learn more. And I ended up getting, I think, like rebaptized here at Arizona State. I just remember I did it again with kind of like our team chaplain, because I just felt like I was so far removed. And I remember doing it as a kid, but like now I'm an adult. I'm a grown man and I know a lot more, and it's just a lot more real, and you learn so much more and it means more. And I felt like it, and maybe it wasn't necessary, but for me, it felt like, yeah, I could do this, to just really kind of commit myself to the Lord. And, but that's always been a big aspect of my life is my faith, and my relationship with Jesus. And I think that my family and that helped keep me grounded, and was always raised to just be humble and continue to put your head down and work and be selfless and give, deflect praise and take on blame. And it's kind of what you got to do as a quarterback. Like that's the unwritten rule. Yeah. And so that's kind of what did it for me. To answer your first question, the second one was similar. I would say similar answer to part one is my faith and how I was raised, in terms of not being distracted in college. And some of the way, some of the lives these guys live and the way they go about their business, I can never picture myself, doing things the way they do it. And not that that's wrong. Like you said, do your thing, enjoy your own cup of tea. But for me, I still enjoyed college. I still had great experiences and still had plenty of fun. But I did it in my own way, and I felt very comfortable with that. And I also, had a girlfriend who's now my wife, so pretty easy to stay grounded when you're disciplined, got a strong faith, good head on your shoulders, and you're holding it down at home with your own lady. It helps block out a lot of stuff that college brings.
Definitely. Well, let's talk quickly about actual playing and the experience on the Arizona State team prior to transferring. Just walk me through those years.
Yeah, loved it here, man. Arizona State, like I'm like you said, I graduated very quickly, so I'm an alum. Love Arizona, which is why I'm so freaking excited to be back. But football is great. I mean, we kind of sputtered a little bit when it came to like actually having successful seasons, but got to meet tons of really, really great people, really great men, both coaches, support staff members, resources throughout the university with academics and professors and teammates. Redshirted my first year, got to learn a lot from Mike Bercovici, and the rest of the guys that were in that room. We had a pretty talented room with Burko, Manny Wilkins, myself, Bryce Perkins, all guys who ended up having success on their own journeys and the paths that they went. Second year after the redshirt year, competed for the job, kind of neck and neck all the way up through fall camp, towards the end of fall camp. Lost it, so I didn't end up starting, but I got a little playing time versus SC, and then our starter, Manny had gotten hurt in that game. So I got my first start against UCLA the following week, and, welcome to college football type of experience. I remember coming to the sideline after a couple of drives and excuse my language, I'm like, fuck, I haven't even looked at safeties and identified defense. I'm just out there snapping the ball. And to actually have the ability to notice that mid-game was, I actually think was pretty impressive for a young kid. But after that moment, kind of got settled in and started to get a rhythm and started to play pretty solid down the stretch, and ended up getting hurt with 2 or 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, which put me out for the rest of that season and the following season because I was recovering. We won that game, by the way, against UCLA. I was 1-0 as a starter at Arizona State, and beat the hometown team, which felt nice. But
don't let them forget it.
No, I won't. But it was tough just because I knew that was my opportunity to, potentially earn more playing time and help my team win. And we won that game, but it came at a cost and put me out for, we were at the halfway point at that time. So I missed the back half of the season, and it was a very serious injury. So I was recovering, throughout the following season, but came off of it healthy and haven't had any issues. And obviously, transferred after that following season, and did a lot of really, really good stuff in Memphis.
What was your psyche like during that injury recovery time frame? Were you, it's just hard. You finally got an opportunity, something outside of your control happens, you get hurt. What were you thinking about? Where were you mentally?
Initially, I remember tearing up, crutching off the field not because of pain, more just because, like I said, just the understanding and realization, this is my opportunity and now I'm effing hurt. This sucks.
Yep.
After that though, you can ask family, friends, I was great, even in the hospital.
What was the exact injury?
I did a Liz Frank fracture dislocation. So I did the Liz Frank fracture, which is between the toes, which, is you'll see it, it's not super common, but you have actually seen it more and more kind of throughout sports and football. It's nothing super crazy, but it is a decently long recovery process in time, which why it stinks. But I did that on top of an entire midfoot dislocation. So basically, if you looked at your foot and slid all your toes over one spot to the, look at your right foot and all your toes, your metatarsals and midfoot slid over, that's basically what I did. So it was really bad. To give you some context, you don't see that ever in football. My doctor who did my surgery, Bob Anderson, he was with the Packers at the time, or the Panthers, I think. The day before the surgery, in the pre-op, he sitting there talking to me, and he's like, look, I want you to know, a lot of people say, when they get injured, oh, it's just football and comes with the territory type of thing. He goes, I want you to know, this isn't football. It's extremely unfortunate. I will see a foot injury like yours, maybe once every decade. When it comes to just football, he goes, your injury is more happens with high impact athletes, whether it's dirt bike riders or people that basically have landing extremely brutally, or feet get caught up and stuff, that type of stuff. And so it was kind of a really unfortunate scenario. But back to the whole mindset, I never was down. I think I was in a time of my life where my faith, and still is, but my faith was continually growing and extremely strong. It's had a really good perspective and outlook on life. And that full year was actually probably the most growth I've seen myself do personally, just not only like within my own life off the field, but also like on the field, because I almost had to take on the role of like a player coach of like, I know I'm not playing.
Right. Find a
So
way to
really,
contribute.
finding a way to contribute, really like helping mentor teammates and doing as much as I can to help Manny, who is the starter, and just add value. And so it was fine. Like I handled it well. Now there were times throughout the recovery process where like you hit little speed bumps or checkpoints, and then you can't push. You know, you want to keep on going, but whether it's because of pain or like they're not allowing you through the rehab process to like continue to roll. You know, there's a little bit of frustration or getting annoyed or bummed that like, okay, I'm still not doing this when I feel like I should be.
Yeah.
But I never was like negative or down on myself or super bummed. And just kind of embraced what it was. And I do believe that played a big part in my recovery, because I think when guys get injured, or even if they just miss time for whatever reason, like how you handle those things mentally bleeds into what you're actually doing and getting back onto the field. So it went really well, man. And it sucked, but I thought I handled it probably the best I could. And obviously what came from it, shit, no one could have ever written or drawn up.
Let's jump to that. I mean, you end up transferring to Memphis. You can detail why Memphis, but I mean, literally went on to just absolutely light it up. I'm sure that was the comeback you were certainly hoping for and more. And I want to know, what went into that decision? Tell me about just life in the Memphis football program. And also a question that I have is, how were you received when a lot of, people talk about the portal and are so used to it now that guys are transferring all over the place. But how did the team actually receive you as this incoming older guy, quarterback, big recruit, playing experience under his belt, who just shows up one day? How did the team welcome you?
Yeah, well, getting to the point of actually transferring was really fast, happened super quick, because, got hurt 16, surgery and recovery going into 17 and throughout that season. As we're going through the latter part of the 2017 season at Arizona State, I was healthy. I was good to go. And then it was just really like those little details of recovery of like getting even stronger, or like just doing certain movements better than you used to, pushing through that last little limit. But I knew coming out of that year, like, I'm good to go and I want to play. And Manny was coming back for another year, and he had just started for the last 2 years. So mentally I knew, like, okay, this ain't going to be a competition. He's going into his senior year. We're still close to this day, but like at the time we're boys, like, we're best friends. And I'm like, I want to compete and I want to do well for myself, but I know it's going to be his job, and I want him to thrive. Mm-hmm. So, and this mentality came later. Like, I went into the off season planning to come back. Our staff had gotten fired. I still wasn't out. Like, our head coach even told me, like, hey, be still, man. Like, you picked Arizona State for a reason, and, just be still, pray about it, lean on the Lord, lean on your family. And we got into January, and I still wasn't going to transfer. And then we caught wind just through people, in the football world. With me having already been graduated, I still had 3 years to play. And I was going to be a pretty hot commodity if like people knew that. And so that's kind of how the wheels started turning on, is transferring an option, or is that something I want to do? So long story short, obviously I ultimately made that decision. However, back then there was no portal. You had to get released from the school, with your, expressing your intent to leave. And then once you did that, then you are legally able to communicate with schools.
Yeah.
So
right.
That means you got to start. That means the semester started, because they're not in school. The first week of January, I think we started, like the second week, might have been like January 8th or something like that. But so I had to do that. once I got that, I knew I wanted to get somewhere for spring. So stuff was going to have to happen super fast. And I knew it wasn't going to be like high school where you bring in all the suitors and, taste all the different flavors. Like I knew I was going to need to go somewhere where I had a prior relationship, whether it was one of the zillion coaches that I played for in my time at Arizona State or just a really strong relationship from, my high school recruitment. And all I really cared about was that relationship and the opportunity to compete for a job. I knew I wasn't going to ever be guaranteed, hey, you come here, you're going to be the starter. Like that doesn't happen.
Right.
And so there was only a handful of schools that I was ever interested in talking to. And obviously Memphis was one of them, with my relationship with Coach Norvell and Coach Dillingham and the rest of that staff, because a lot of them were, prior Sun Devils. And ultimately, that's where I made the decision to go. And I told them I was coming. I'd never been to Memphis, Tennessee. I never had looked up Memphis, Tennessee. I've never even been to the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I committed and went sight unseen, just straight blind faith, not trusting, I've got a great relationship with this staff, and their quarterback, just went on to the NFL. So they've got an opportunity to compete for the job. And he told me straight up, like, we've got this guy and this guy and this guy that are, that have been here for X amount of years, and you're going to have to beat them out. But, I know you, and you're a competitor, and we know your skill set. If you come in here, like, you're going to have a good chance, and you got to earn it. You got to go earn the respect and trust of the team and, be the leader in the court and the QB1. So that's all I needed. I went out there fast as hell. And to answer, kind of how the team welcomed me, they welcomed me with open arms. I mean, it wasn't like they were jumping for joy because, they're friends with these other quarterbacks. So it wasn't like I was embraced when I got there.
Yeah.
But no one made it hard. Like, they welcomed me in. I was a part of the team. And then it was just about getting to know your teammates and just developing those relationships. And honestly, the first year it was tough just because you're jumping right into spring ball and you're competing, and you're busy just with football stuff. There's no really like sit down kumbaya session, share your story.
Yeah.
I share mine. But those guys were cool to me and welcomed me in, and they saw, for me, I knew going in there, like, I'm not going to be, even though I'm like you said, an older transfer and a quarterback, I'm not going to be the vocal guy, because I know if someone were to come into my school and just assume that position, like, that would piss me off, rub me the wrong way, or I'd just be like, all right, this guy's full of shit.
Yep.
So I never took that approach, because for me, leadership and just being myself, I've always taken pride in just being extremely authentic and genuine. And if I don't feel it's right, I'm not going to do it. And so I just wanted to grind, like, show them what I'm about with my work ethic, with, how I'm going to play and attack every day. And I'll earn those stripes, no pun intended with the Tigers, but I'll earn those stripes as I go. And I thought it went well. And obviously won that job, and everyone and their mother transferred out kind of throughout that off season leading up to the fall. And so they were stuck with me, and it turned out to be a pretty good guy to get stuck with.
If you can boil it down to one moment, what was your highest high at Memphis?
2019 was like, go ask anyone in the city of Memphis. Like, they don't have to be a player. Like, the entire 2019 year was pretty special. It's the greatest season in school history. We broke all kinds of records. First outright conference championship in school history, first New Year's Six Bowl in school history, all that kind of stuff. We really should have gone undefeated, but we freaking jacked around and lost the game. But I was, because everyone asked me what's your favorite moment? What's your favorite game? All that. And when you're on a team that's succeeding and thriving at that level, every game means more, because you have to keep winning. And so it would be like you'd win a big game and you're like, oh, that's extremely high. But then the next week you've got another really good team that you have to go beat. And then that win gives us the opportunity to play on ESPN College Game Day. And we go have a 54-14 40-something shootout victory over SMU, who was like a top 15 team. So like, all right, now that's like the bar's now even higher, and then that translates to the conference championship, and you're like, okay, well now, like this thing, and now you win the conference championship, and now you're going to the Cotton Bowl, and you're playing Penn State with Micah Parsons and the crew, and it's just it kept getting better and better. So I'd say that entire year, on top of the success, the big thing for me was like that was the year after the first season where I really got to like gel with my teammates and dive deep into getting to know each other. And I think that was what helped place, a big part in our success, because we were a really tight group. And that off season was the biggest thing I ever did. It wasn't any weight or drill or pass or practice that I did with my team. It was really just getting to know them. We did all that, but people ask me, what did you focus on the most, or what did you think was the biggest growth or development in the off season? It was the off field stuff with my teammates. Going into that year, and queued us up for a pretty historic run.
You also won the William Campbell Trophy, the Bill Campbell Award. It's for the best, basically, combination or well-rounded athlete, student, community service member. There's some pretty legendary alums of that award. Yeah. So that's there's something to be proud of right there for sure.
For sure. I was very proud of that one, especially just because it's all encompassing. It's not just football, right, which is, what I'm all about. So I take a great deal of pride in that one. And like you said, there's some big names. There's a lineage of awesome, not just quarterbacks, but football players that have won that award. So to be a part of that fraternity was extremely special, and to have that experience that we kind of touched on earlier, that's forever. Your name's engraved in that thing till the earth is no more. So it's super cool.
It's awesome. All right. Final question. And I've made it very clear that I like the multi-part question. So it's a bit two-part.
Yeah.
I'll keep it to two this time. What do you miss most about playing? Mm-hmm. And what are you most excited about when it comes to coaching?
Yeah. The thing I miss most about playing is just the fact that like you're in it. Like as a coach, you're in it, but like as a player, you have basically like complete control of like what goes down when the ball is kicked off. Like especially as a quarterback, the ball is in your hand. So, it's not easy like Madden, but you're the one who's got the controller playing Madden. Like you get to make the decisions. You're the one making the plays. I do miss being in the locker room, but when it's just very special. And this as a former player and everyone out there that's played, like just being teammates, is such a unique and incredible time and experience and bond that no one can take away from you, and that you'll have forever. And just extremely fun memories with those guys and hilarious stories. And I think that's what I'll probably miss most about playing is all of that with your brothers, and ultimately like going out there and being the one that little kids are dreaming about being, or that are playing, they're playing with you in video games or wearing your jersey, and you're the guy, like you're the man in the arena. Everyone's heard that poem, like that's you. So I'll miss that. But what I look forward to most in coaching is the fact that I'm still connected to all that. And I actually get to have an extremely big impact and influence on those on the men in the arena's lives. You're the one that is helping prepare them for those moments and preparing them to be that man. And you also have a significant impact just in their life in general, not just football. Like you're helping mold, this guy's life. And you hear it plenty of times, like players or now coaches, back in the day, just how critical, good coaches have been, or, some people don't have the fortune and the blessing of having great guardians or role models or parents that were there or to look up to. And, their big person was a coach. And I just know, even as a kid that comes from a great background, like my dad coached me when I was a kid, and I'm sure, I don't know if your dad did or whatnot, but even if it's through Pop Warner or some kid, you know, their dad coaches them in high school. Like those are some of the super, you know, some of my fondest memories and super cool moments and times to look back on with my dad and to share with him. And, you know, you talk about stories that you had back then. And so I think just being a coach, like it's the closest thing to, and there's a whole nother side of it that is extremely special. And for me, I think it benefits me greatly to be a former player because I can relate to these kids probably more than they understand. And it just gives me the platform to give back and to pour into them and hopefully just make them a little bit better and how kind of help set them up for when they're no longer in the building with us. So it's still that bridge because I'm still young and just coming from playing. So it's still really fun and interesting. But I know here soon, like these guys are going to look at me like, oh, you don't know what the F you're talking about. And, you know, you're just an old wannabe. But it's fun. So I'm excited. And we've got a really good group here that I've had the pleasure of starting to get to know. And they keep you young, man. They're a bunch of characters, as you know.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, awesome, Brady. Thanks so much for taking all this time. That was great. I'll certainly be watching closely this year and wishing you the best of luck in Tempe and just in all your coaching endeavors that lie ahead. So thanks again.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. This was fun.